Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my podcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. And Tom, we're inching closer to playing hockey.
Are we?
Well, we're going to talk about that, whether we are or not. The one thing TSN, I was looking at their report, and here's the phrasing, the one thing, and I want to get your comment on. The NHL and the NHL Players Association have the ability to postpone, delay, move, or cancel any games and the two elements that they can do all that for is either player health or the integrity of the competition. That's a pretty wide berth they have, and the players have the right of going to immediate arbitration should the NHL rule anything that they don't particularly like. And boy, when I read that, I thought, they're covering all the bases, but it just reminds us all that this may not work.
Right. So in other words, if the league decides they're going to shut it down for any reason, then the players can now go to arbitration to say, no, we don't want to shut down. You have to keep playing.
Well, any ruling that they make.
Right. But in reverse, like what if the players want to shut it down?
Yeah, no, I guess they can do that as well.
Yeah.
So, but, already we've had a number of, players, test positive. The NBA, Tom, has shut down 7 different training facilities there. And, it's a little bit, it's a bigger problem for the NBA just because they have such small rosters to begin with, and how many guys are really relevant. Probably the starting 5 on each team is the most important, but then you get maybe 2 or 3 others, so 7 or 8 players. So if you lose 3 of those players or 4 of those players, so.
Well, and then if you're one of the guys that it doesn't get tested positive, but your teammates get tested positive, and you see more and more teammates getting tested positive, you're going to be saying to yourself, what are we doing here? Like, you're waiting for me to get it? I guess a lot of the people, from what I read anyways, the people that are getting sick now, not just athletes, are younger people supposedly, and really it doesn't appear to be as dangerous for them. Who knows how that's the truth or not. So, I mean, I guess with athletes, the theory is they could get sick and they get tested positive and not even have any symptoms and not be suffering from it. But still, what you said, though, it's a risky proposition from a health standpoint. And the fact that they're, like you're touching on, they're going to have to shut them down for 14 days, those players, to get tested positive. And if enough of those guys get tested positive, then how do you have an integrity in the game anymore that you now have a legitimate team on the ice or basketball court?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I've said many times on our podcast that I'm not overly concerned about an athlete becoming seriously ill because, most of them, the vast majority, don't have underlying health issues. And by definition, an athlete is a healthy person. He has to, an NHL player has to be healthy in order to play the game at a high level. But you say that, and then you see those, there was a Broadway star that just passed away yesterday after a 90-day battle.
Yeah, I know.
And the thing that struck me about this all the way through this battle, and boy, was it an ugly battle. Even if he had survived, he would have needed a double lung transplant. And it looked sometimes like he was going to survive, and then he would relapse, and then he would pull it back together, like he really fought all the way through. But what struck me by his case is, according to his wife, he had no underlying medical issues, and this guy was in the prime of his life. And that's the other thing we have to worry about, is that we do see this, and we hear the president of the United States saying that the 99% of the cases of this, there's nothing to it. And then we have other people talk as if the sky is falling.
Yeah.
And I think, the truth obviously is between those two areas, but it's like playing AC-doocy here. I think it's closer. I don't think it's in the middle.
Well, and there's something like you talk about underlying factors too. And you were like in Detroit there years ago. Was it Yuri Fisher that had the heart attack?
Sure.
Then there's a player in Dallas. I can't remember who that was in Dallas that had a heart attack on the bench too. So it's like, they're supposedly until that point when they had heart attacks, we were all thinking these guys, Jay Bowmeister, this
Right.
past season. So until they had their heart condition, everybody thought, well, there's no underlying condition. Those guys are fine.
Right.
Only 2 guys in the last probably 20 years, but still, God, what if one guy? That's the thing for me. It's just the risk of that one guy. It's terrible when anybody dies for any reason, but particularly with this virus, how scary it is. And if one hockey player ends up, dies because of the virus, what the decision to come back and play, was it worth it then?
No, well, of course it isn't, and that's the concern of it. Just to be accurate, I think the players that you just mentioned, I don't know if they officially had heart attacks. They had heart episodes.
Yes.
I know doctors are always,
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, your point is still exactly the same, which is that no one knew that they had that beneath the surface, what was going on. So, we have to be so careful, and, we have to be careful not to let our own personal desires. I mean, I just keep thinking, man, this is going to be unbelievable. And finally this summer, I'm going to set, in my lake house, and I'm going to watch a MLB baseball game and a hockey game, and finally we're going to have some entertainment, which,
Is that your barber call?
Yeah, it could be, but my appointment's till August 9th. So I'm not late.
Well, you're right. Like we're all excited about the sport coming back. Mike Trout again. We talked about him maybe about a month ago. He's making comments again because it looked like baseball is getting started, and he's still making the same comments. He said, "I just don't feel comfortable with this." And he's got a wife and young kids at home. That's the thing. You're right. And you've touched on this several times. Is that it's one thing for the athlete not to suffer much or any symptoms from a positive test, but then he runs the risk of taking it home to somebody he loves, right? So.
Yeah, that's the hard thing. We talked last time on the show, and you had brought up, I had asked you just point blank, because, we've now had 5 baseball players say they're not going to play, and these are players of note. We've had basketball players say that. We've had 0 hockey players. And I had asked you on the last show that we had, whether or not you thought there would be hockey players, and you talked about the team concept and about the hockey player mentality and all that. So you thought that there wouldn't be very many, if any. Right. And one of my friends sort of took issue with that and asked me to drill down on that with you. Her concern was it makes it seem like they care less about their families than other athletes. When you say that, right. Because as I pointed out, and I said, well, I don't think we're actually addressing that aspect of it. I don't think that's true, because I think hockey players are pretty good family guys. But I don't know. Explain that a little bit more.
Sure. No, you know what? It's a great question by her. I never really thought of it that way. That would be the appearance. That these other guys in other sports are opting out of playing because of fear what they bring back to the families. What does that say about hockey players? Well, you're right. I mean, obviously, I'm very biased towards hockey players, but they're fantastic family guys. I would say pretty much they all are fantastic family guys. They know that they would have made it anywhere in life if it wasn't for their families. I just think, we have this, we talk about having teams being sequestered away from their families. I know back, I'm friends with John Tonelli, played with the Islanders, and played with him in Los Angeles, and Bob Bourne. They talked about the times when they won their cups and went under long runs of the cups. They would be away from the family that entire time. They would stay in a hotel. Now, maybe they, if there's a break in between a series or something like that, they could go home to their families. But they were, for that, they made a commitment to the team that they were going to try to win a Stanley Cup, and this is the way they decided to do things. So they were away from their families for that, 2 months of the Stanley Cup playoffs. That doesn't mean that they didn't love their families. It's just, I think, and I don't want to talk about other athletes in other sports, but in the hockey world, again, you make your money during the regular season. You play in the playoffs to win a Stanley Cup, to raise the trophy with most history, I think, in the history in all the sports. So it's that dedication. It's that, like I know I had Dallas Drake as a client, and we've talked about him before. And he played his entire career, started in Detroit, went to Phoenix and Winnipeg, and then St. Louis. And at the end, when he got bought out by St. Louis, and he said to me flat out, he says, "Get me to Detroit and don't F it up," because he wanted a chance to win the Stanley Cup. That's what I meant to him. He didn't care about the money at that point. It was to win the Stanley Cup. So, and again, fantastic family guy, but that the allure of winning a Stanley Cup is just something that I think the families even kind of embrace that and realize, okay, we're going to have to do without our father or our husband, or whoever it is, for a period of time here. But he pursues this because that's how important his whole life has been dedicated towards winning the Stanley Cup. So,
well, it's interesting, within Frank Saravelli of TSN's reporting. There's a notation there that once the conference final and the finals begin, they're going to bring the families in the bubble, which kind of does speak to, the importance that the Players Association and the NHL place on families. They want them to share, just as you just pointed out, to share in the experience as well.
I'd like to know how things are going inside the bubble before I'm committing to bringing my family.
Well, I mean, obviously they'll have, 2 rounds to understand that.
Yeah.
I'm generalizing here when I say they're being brought in within the bubble. I don't know what that exactly means, but I think that when I use that phrasing, I'm just saying there's going to be room for the players to see their family once you get to the conference final. So, how they do that, I don't know. But they are going to do that. But, there's some logistics here that are just flabbergasting. And that is they're going to test every day. And each team is going to be allowed 31 players and a total staff of 52. So if you do the math on that, the NHL is going to be doing more than 1,200 tests. Yeah,
it'll be 12,000, right? Yeah,
12,000 tests. Yeah. Geez, I can't do math this morning.
And I hope there's no shortage of tests. I mean, that's not going to look good if other people around the country can't get the tests. It appears that's not the case now, though, right? There's plenty of tests out there.
Yeah. So anyway, no, it is 1,200 tests. No, I was right the first time here. They're going to do 1,200, more than 1,200 a day because there's 50.
Oh, 1,200.
Yeah. So well, that's a lot of tests. Like, these tests aren't cheap.
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere that they're $100 to $125. So there's a lot of money going to be spent on testing. Now that'll be reduced as we move along. And then does that mean that, because the staff, I'm not talking about the NHL staff, but the people working at the housekeeping, at the hotel, the people running the food services and so forth. I'm assuming they're going to have to be tested as well. They're coming in.
And they're doing the tests on the players now. They're just unofficially skating at their practice facilities too. They're getting tested.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot going into this that we've just spoken to. It almost feels like it's this big giant puzzle, and it's got to come together perfectly, or it's not going to work.
Well, here's one of our followers with a question here too. What are your feelings on a player electing to opt out of this playoff system? If we mentioned many players seem concerned. I got to tell you, that's a great question for me because I've told the story in the past, the Phil Esposito and Anders Hedberg story. When I was a rookie in the National Hockey League, it was Phil Esposito's last year in the league, and he was that old school guy. It was all about team. You talk about he loved his family, great family guy, but with him, hockey, when you were playing hockey, that was it. Anders Hedberg, in between periods, one game at Madison Square Garden, his wife was giving birth, so Anders came in and was getting undressed to go to the hospital, and Phil was just livid. And I was sitting right beside Anders in the locker room. Phil's on the other side of the room, and he's giving it to Anders Hedberg, and I'm watching this like two legendary players, and I'm a rookie in the league. In Phil's mind, he loved his family, but he wasn't going to be participating, giving having the birth of the child. He's going to stand there watching. So why wouldn't I finish the hockey game? But Anders didn't feel that way. He was a little bit more new school compared to Phil being the old school guy, and he was going to leave and be with his family. So I respected both sides of it. Anders was going to do the right thing, but I also respected Phil, and that the team was very important to him. So if a player, to me, opted out of playing and I guess it really doesn't matter what level of player he was, but if a guy decides that he doesn't want to play because he doesn't feel it's safe or right for his family, I'm sure the team wouldn't like it very much, but I would actually respect the guy. If he's doing it because he just thinks it's unsafe, not fair to himself and his family, then I would respect the guy. From the team standpoint, obviously the guys are going to miss him, and maybe there'd be some guys that don't understand it. Maybe a younger guy that doesn't have a family wouldn't quite understand what that guy is going through when he makes that decision. But I would think to me, again, I would respect him if he's making the decision based on what he thinks is right for himself and his family, then I would respect the decision.
Yeah, I would totally respect it. And I would hope everyone within the hockey community would as well. What I would use as sort of an analogy is I saw the new version movie of Midway yesterday again, and I've seen that before, but I watched it again, and there's a scene in there in which a pilot during the battle, and what's interesting about this movie is they're using the stories of real people who fought in the battle. So it's not just generals on there, but the Dick Best, the top pilot, whose story has been chronicled. He's a character that's in the movie as well, and the other pilots that were real people are also depicted. So it isn't just the famous people that are depicted; it's real live people, heroes from that. And in one scene, they have a pilot who has had to crash his plane on the deck of the carrier, and he goes over the side and he severely hurts his back, and they have to go out again and fight. And the commander says he sees this guy walking, limping, being helped to his plane, and the commander said, you don't have to go again. No one is going to question your courage. You've been on all these, and if you're not fit to fly, don't do this. You don't need to do that. And he said, well, I am going to do this. These are my guys, and I'm going to lead them. Well, my point in all this is, he did that in wartime.
Yeah.
For his country.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are not in wartime.
Totally.
We are not doing this for our country. So we have to be careful that we don't, if you've got issues at home with regard to someone who is more susceptible, who has underlying conditions, as and these baseball players, I think it's been helpful that some of them have detailed what their issues are. Somebody said, I have a premature baby at home. Someone says, I have my mother and my father living with me.
Sure.
So I think that helps everyone else sort of identify. But I think it is crucial to remember that this isn't life and death if you play, but it may or it could be life and death.
Yeah.
So why play these games?
Right. And you know what, Kevin, you raised a lot of great points there too. But how about the other side of it, where the father, has got a young family at home and a wife, all counting on him, not just for financial reasons, but to be the father and the husband at home. And he thinks, like, again, God forbid he gets sick and doesn't make it. Now he's left this family to go play hockey, and now they don't have their father and their husband the rest of their lives. Like, to me, there's,
Yeah, it is very complicated. I keep telling that to people, that it's not as easy as you think. You can't just be cavalier like sometimes I sound when I say, hey, I don't believe any of them are going to, but I also am keenly aware. And the other issue, like, these are the things that complicate it. In these situations, the people who help out are the grandparents.
Yeah.
They come in and they help with the kids. Yeah. Well, now it's hard to do that, because then they've got to come out of their seclusion. They've got to come away from their quarantining. We're staying away. I'm at my lake house and everything. Yeah. Because I'm older and so forth. So what would normally be during the playoffs, where the grandparents come in and help with the kids and everything, that may not be available. So it is kind of messy.
Yeah, and the thing that keeps striking me is that, and I've said this to you a number of times, if you went back 3 or 4 months ago and you saw situations like where Tampa had to close their training facility because of the cases, St. Louis recently had to close their training facility, all the positive tests, I think there's been over 30 now in the National Hockey League. Would we have even been thinking to go back and play with all those positive tests and the fact you have to close down practice facilities? I mean, have we gotten to the point where we're just used to it now? Is it just, you know?
Well, but I guess my point in all this is, and I love your thoughts on this. I'm less worried about positive tests at the beginning. When it's we're just getting people to come in from the outside. There's been all different levels of quarantining. Some people are very careful. Some people are not careful at all. So I would expect that athletes who are young that some of them are going to test positive when we first start. But, I think that, getting a positive test now is completely different than getting a positive test once we get in lockdown. Right now, everybody's out there. We know that a minimum of 3 million people have gotten this. That's 1%.
Right.
And, we all watched what was going on the beaches yesterday. I'm sure some of the, bars were full.
You know what? Sorry to interrupt you. You raise a great point there. So if somebody gets test positive while they're in the bubble, then that means they got it from somebody else, right?
Yeah.
That's in the bubble.
Yeah, or they snuck out.
Yes. Okay.
Right.
So as soon as they didn't sneak out, they then get it from somebody else that's inside the bubble. Yeah, you're right, because then they're going to say, well, obviously it's coming from someplace. So if one person got it, logically, then somebody else is going to get it too. We need to shut this down, right? Isn't that?
Well, I mean, it's going to be scary because there's language in the agreement for contact tracing, because look, especially in the beginning when there's 1,200 people, you're not going to see all 1,200 people. Every team is going to have a different floor of the hotel, and so forth. So you'll be able to, I think, be able to say, well, look, I hung out in the lobby on this day and I saw this player. And so they'll try to shut it down pretty quickly. But that's, I think as time goes on, it becomes less of a problem. You know what I mean? Like in the beginning, there's 1,200 players.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. But as we get down, now you can sort of keep track of them. But I did think, and and again, I'm not an expert, a logistics expert, but boy, 52 people seemed like a lot.
Yeah.
Like to me, I thought, shouldn't they have cut that down a little bit?
Yeah.
31 players plus, a trainer. You got to have a team doctor.
Yeah. But you mean like these teams now, they travel like they've got like 10 trainers. I mean, the equipment trainers, physical trainers, and all the coaching staff and video guys. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they've been careful. So if 52 is the number, it's the number. But
How about, what's amazing during this whole thing too? There's been hardly any talk about the new CBA being negotiated too, or how they're going to go forward in the next 2 years. It just seems like the two sides, the Players Association, I mean this in a very positive way, the Players Association and the owners are working these things through without any public comments. It doesn't seem like there's not, like, usually if there's something that they're hung up on something, people are making comments and using the media and the fans as leverage to try to get what they want. That's not happening at all right now. It seems like they're really working towards trying to get something done for both for the next, the short term, the next couple of years, and long term for the new CBA.
I think it is done. I do, Tom. I think it's all, but
it's all done. Okay.
Yeah, I do. And just a gut feeling that, and from reading what other people are writing, but this isn't the first rodeo for Donald Fear and Gary Bettman.
Yeah.
And just everything you just articulated is why I think they were doing it. It's easier to get things done when you're already meeting regularly. The relationships are there. Everyone's working together trying to make this work. And the other thing is, and I felt this all along, that chip of being able to play in the Olympics for the players was one that, and I don't know if the league created that chip, but I really do think that they really didn't see the great value in, and I think they're wrong, but great value in going to the Olympics. But I think all this talk about a 6-year deal, I think that's what's going to happen, and I think.
So do you know that they have agreed they can go to the Olympics now? Has that been?
Yeah, that's going to be in the deal. If it's a 6-year deal is agreed to, yes.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So
Has that been reported, or is that just something?
Yeah, no, it's been reported. It's out there. It's floating around out there. Yeah. So, but
so the owners could have been floating that out there, making it seem like they didn't want that, and then they can use that as a chip to throw at them.
Well, this has been going on for so long about them saying they didn't want to go to the Olympics. I think there is truth to that. I've talked to enough executives to know that they could never get their arms around what the value was to the league. Like I can look at it and say, look, the Olympics are bigger than the NHL. So you want to have your little brand rubbing up against that. Now, saying all that, I always understood that they were never treated very well by the IOC, the International Olympic Committee. They seemed to just ignore the fact that the NHL was loaning its players to the Olympics. Like, they didn't give them any special privileges. Like they couldn't even show video of the competition on their website. It was just ridiculous. They didn't, pay homage for the league would want to bring people over and all that, and it was, tickets were an issue. Everything was an issue.
But even like, what are the players getting out of it? Like, is there some benefit to the players? Like, I don't see any benefit to the players. I mean,
they want to play. You and I have had this discussion before. You think it's all malarkey, but players want to play, and the players who don't go to the Olympics want to have that time off. They're okay with that. So, I've done this podcast after you and I had that one podcast when we talked about it. I asked a player about it. I said, "Am I wrong about this?" He goes, "No." He said,
"Well, what level of player was it though? Was it a star player that was going to the Olympics?"
No, it was a guy who was not playing. He goes, "No, we like having that time off in the middle of the season when we go."
I never wanted time off this season.
Well, they do. They want to go to Acapulco if they're single. They want to take their kids to Disney World. So, but it's a big deal. Like and it touches players from all countries as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I should be careful. I guess, to play in the Olympics, I had a shot with Canada in 1980 to play in the Olympics. And that was, to be part of that, get that close. That was still fun too. But I can see that. But I like I hate to say it like this, from a business standpoint, are you building the player's brand up so that he can benefit from it somehow? I know there's more to it than that, but I mean, I don't see some financial benefit for anybody really. And again, there's more to it than just the money, but.
And what's being laid out there, obviously, is that they've worked out details of how players would pay back the money. Obviously, they're giving up that last check to 6 years spread of how much they'll
so the players still owed one more paycheck from this current season, correct?
Well, they didn't get it, and that will just go to the league over the.
Right. So the idea is that they'll keep the cap at like 81.5 million
until it reaches where we were in revenue before. So it'll stay at the 81.
And then they'll limit how much escrow can be had. Correct?
Correct. Yeah. So the escrow will be limited, and then they'll pay back over time.
Right, so that will mean there'll be a shortfall to the owners if anticipated the revenues don't go where they need to be. That means the owners will be getting less than their 50% of the revenues. So that money, the difference between like if it's 40% they're getting, that other 10% then will be paid back over time from the players.
Over time, right? So it's spread out over the time, so the hit is not as great.
Right.
Over the entire duration of the extension.
So I'm just trying to think. So if a guy retires in the next, he plays 2 years and then plays the rest of this year and then plays another year and then retires, he's limited. So he's benefiting from it because his won't be having as much escrow, but the players after him will basically be paying his.
Well, I don't know how it all works.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, but in theory, I know what you're saying. But there could be something that's in there.
I can't believe you would force a player after he's retired.
No, I agree. I don't know what it would be.
Right. Interesting.
So
that'd be an interesting negotiation, because that's something. This is brand new stuff, right? They haven't been down this road before. I mean,
no, but what's gratifying to me is you look at the tension that baseball had.
Yeah.
Where they've had nothing but contentious negotiations from the history of the Baseball Players Association. Of course, Donald Fear was part of that as well. Won a huge lawsuit with that, and then you have two people who have been through this before many times, Fear Bettman, and they're getting it together, hammering it out, and figuring out a way to extend the contract. This is all good stuff to me.
Yeah. Well, it really seems like they're both trying to figure out ways to get it done, as opposed to figure out ways to not get it done. Right? They're not just like
correct,
putting their head in and saying, "I want this," and that's it. So,
one more thing I wanted to bring up about the logistics of being in the bubble and playing, because this is coming. Like, we're in July now. We're the 26th, isn't that what they're talking about playing? So
they 26th, they end up going to their bubble city, right?
Right, 26th. Then so we're that's amazing that we're getting that close. But one of some of the reporting has come out suggests that if a player has to leave the bubble for whatever reason, his wife's giving birth, there's illness in the family, a medical issue of his own, whatever reason, to come back in. Now, we've talked about this before. It'll be, usually you say 14 days because, they talk about the incubation of this thing is, a few days to 14 days. But we all know, because most of us are obsessed with this and we watch Dr. Sanjay Gupta or whoever else it is, we know that most people get it within 5 days.
Right. And
I find it interesting that in the language of this, according to the reporting by TSN, and they do a good job, as we know, if you go and you come back, you must have 4 negative tests over 4 consecutive days, and then you can rejoin the herd. Okay. So they're going by the 5-day.
Right. So what if a guy? Okay, I'm going to throw a scenario at you. A guy gets a concussion, has to go to the hospital.
Right.
Get an MRI or X-ray or whatever, and in the hospital, that's where people with the virus are.
Yeah.
Right? So then, when he comes back to the team, does he have to sit the 14 days then?
No, it's not 14 days. It's 4 days now. Remember?
4 days. Okay. Yes.
No, but see, all that will be contained. There'll be an MRI at the arena, so he won't have to go there for a concussion. The only way you're going to the hospital is if you're seriously injured. Not to suggest that concussion isn't serious, because it is. Right. But I'm saying they can deal with those issues.
But so when I got a concussion in the playoffs, Bobby Nyström knocked me out, gave me a concussion. I spent the night in the hospital.
Yeah,
I was under observation.
You're going to be 4 days.
4 days. I got to get 4 negative tests.
4 negative tests. Okay. Now, I know where you're going on that. Right. Where you're going on that is that, but you know what? With concussion, you'd be out 4 days anyway.
Yeah, well, I guess it's different times.
Now you would.
Yeah.
Now you would. You'd be out 4 days.
That's true. Yeah.
But at a minimum.
Yeah.
At a minimum. So, but anyway.
Little brain damage won't hurt anybody. Come back and play in 2 days.
Yeah. That's right. You're still the second best player ever without a spleen to play in the NHL.
Pierre Forsberg, yes.
Yeah, Pierre Forsberg has got you on that one. So speaking of that, where I don't know why we moved away from this, but I was wondering why, just because I know you so well, why you didn't suggest that had you made that Canadian Olympic team, that maybe the 1980 Olympic Miracle on Ice wouldn't have happened.
It's good. Sure. So, did I tell you the story of why I didn't get selected for the Olympic team?
I probably have heard it, but I've forgotten. And
a very embarrassing story. So that was going into my senior year. So my senior year of college, we ultimately ended up going. We were number 1 in the country and going to play the national championship game. We lost to North Dakota, but before that season started, that's when I was trying out with the Canadian Olympic team. So we're in Calgary, and the Saddle Dome there in Calgary had not been built yet. They had the little corral, and we were staying in these double wide construction trailers. They didn't have a lot of money for Hockey Canada, so we were staying in construction trailers. So myself, and I won't mention the other 2 guys, you know them both, ended up being NHL players, decided it was the good Canadian boy thing to do was go out and have a few beers that night. So then we got back to the trailer at the wee hours in the morning and decided it was going to be really funny to take the furniture out of the TV room and take it out and put it on the trainer's car in the parking lot. I don't know why we felt that this would be funny, but that's what we thought would be funny. The other 2 guys went to bed. I thought it would be even more funny to wake the trainer up at 3 a.m. and let him know that we had done this, because it was some really funny joke. So the next morning, I get up, and Father Bauer was this revered man. He ran Hockey Canada. And he comes, we're all outside the trailer. I think we're walking over to the rink for practice or whatever. And he comes walking over to me. I think he's going to give me a big hug, like, "Oh, Tom, great to have you on board." He handed me a plane ticket and sent me home that next day.
Oh, wow.
So that's why I did not make the team. So I had to now go back to my family and everybody up in Marquette, Michigan, where Northern Michigan was, and with my tail between my legs. But it was the best thing that happened for me. And it was awful that it happened, but it was like, it drove me so much. Like, I realized I had screwed up so badly, had a great opportunity to play for my country in the Olympics. And it just drove me to, and again, it wasn't because of me. We had a fantastic team in Northern Michigan, but it drove me personally to now kind of make up for that mistake. And it worked out. We, by halfway through the year, my senior year, we're the #1 ranked team in the country. And then we went to the national championship. So it was a terrible thing that happened, but it really, I talk about a lot in my True Good Life stuff about how, I made a mistake and I had the choice. I could lay down and cry about it, or I could get up and get something done and make up for it. And it certainly worked out that way. So,
did you explain to everyone what had happened, or did you just keep?
Oh yeah, no, I told them. It was so embarrassing because, okay, Tom, you're trying out for the Canadian Olympic team, and you decide to put the furniture from the TV room on the trainer's car, and you got sent home. So,
do you believe you would have made that team?
I had a pretty good shot. Guys like Tim Waters, who I played with, Randy Gregg, they were other defensemen that ultimately played on that Olympic team. So I think I had a pretty good shot of making it. So that was the worst part. I didn't feel like I was just there, to have another body at training camp. I really felt like I had a shot of making the team.
All right.
So,
well, that's total honesty. You get that always on Laidlaw and Allen Report. So thanks for joining us, and we'll be back later in the week.
See you Wednesday, guys.